see is a very popular gentleman with such a great turnout, so we're very pleased to have him here today. Do you need something? No? Okay, Dr. Trin, it's all yours. Just as you wanted to come.
Yes.
Pastor Jill.
All right. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Yeah?
Adjust your hearing aids.
I heard there was good cookies here, so I signed up to show up here. Let me try it out first before the lecture starts. Not too bad. Yeah.
Well, eat dessert first. Life is uncertain.
I like that. She said, eat dessert first, life is uncertain. That's why I'm having a cookie now. Are you live, Ralph?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, who wants the rest of the cookies?
No, you enjoy it.
I'll put it here.
Wrap it up.
It's on the belt.
No, I don't know. You want to
So, how much time do I have to talk today? An hour or so? Okay. Don't fall asleep on me, okay?
No,
We have an hour or so.
it's not time.
So, do most of you live here in this community?
Yes, sir.
Yeah? Oh, very cool. Are some of you from outside the community who came in? Okay, I got a few as well. Were you able to get through the security guard? Yeah, I was almost arrested as a security guard. They're like, who are you? But thank you, I got in. It was good with that. So we are here to talk about a topic that obviously everyone else here is interested about. Just out of curiosity, how many of you here know somebody who has had issues with memory loss or Alzheimer's? Raise your hand. Wow, just about every hand. It's kind of scary though, right? With that. So I'm here to give you some information that hopefully will help to kind of empower you to make changes. Not just you, but our community as well, to address this issue. This is as you know, a huge issue in Orange County. Did you know that Alzheimer's in Orange County is like the third or fourth leading cause of death?
Very small old people around here.
Yeah, number one is heart attacks. Number two is cancers. And number three, right behind there, is Alzheimer's. Very scary with that. So just a little background on me. I spent 17 years taking care of patients down in South Orange County, the Mission Viejo area. And my patient population mostly came from Laguna Woods. It's a retirement community there, just similar to here.
Used to be.
With that, about 18,000 folks there with that. So I spent the last 17 years watching my patients go from completely healthy, independent, driving in on their own, having a great conversation with me. And I saw them through the years where they gradually started to lose their memory. And now they don't even remember my name or their loved one's name. We bring them in. It's quite a devastating disease that I've seen over the last 17 years. And as a result of that, what I've done was I kind of went part-time with that other memorial care practice and have kind of devoted myself to looking at better treatments and addressing Alzheimer's disease because it's devastating in every patient I've seen with that. So I spent full time really just going around educating patients and caregivers and doctors about this condition with that because it affects not just patients, but it affects the entire family, doesn't it? With that. So out of curiosity, what causes Alzheimer's? Any guesses?
Something in the brain.
Something in the brain? That's good. That's right. Yes? Glial cells in the brain. He's getting more scientific on me here. That's pretty good. Must be the sandwich. Yeah. Yes.
I've heard the word or saw the word amyloids.
Amyloid. Have you heard that word amyloid?
Yeah.
What is it? Anyone know? What's amyloid? Oh, okay, is it amyloid a good thing or a bad thing?
Bad.
Okay, right. It's a bad thing, right?
Yeah.
Amyloid is a protein that is in the brain. And we know that every patient who have Alzheimer's have amyloid in their brain with that. Yeah, it is the one protein. There's actually more than one protein. There's another one called tau tangles with that. But they're the bad guys. Amyloid protein. Everyone who has Alzheimer's have amyloid. That's the way we make the definitive diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Now, in the past, the way we made this definitive diagnosis of amyloid in your brain was that we had to kind of wait till the patient's dead, and then we would do an autopsy and a biopsy with their brain to say, hey, this person's got amyloid. Oh, so that person had Alzheimer's, right? Luckily, we have new technology now that prevents that. And we now have FDA, well, this is the good news and the bad news. We now have FDA approved brain scans that will specifically look for amyloid in your brain. Now, you can't get this though by just going to your doc and say, I want a scan of my brain to look for this amyloid, because unfortunately the insurance doesn't cover it. It's about, $5,000 or something like that, ballpark number. Insurance, so the technology's there, the insurance doesn't cover it, Medicare doesn't quite cover it. So it's covered through one way now. You can either pay cash or through a clinical trial. It's actually covered for free.
Oh, I see.
We do a lot of clinical trials. That's part of what I do, other than being out here and speaking and things of that sort with that. But back to the amyloid story. So by the time the Alzheimer's patient have their first symptom of memory loss, right? First symptom of memory loss. How long has that amyloid been there in their brain?
20 years?
Close. About 10 to 15 years.
Wow.
So, by the time you have your first symptom of memory loss, damage has been going on for the last 10 to 15 years. Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
It's like the damage has been going on there. Nobody knows about it until the damage is so severe that we start to forget. 10 to 15 years of damage prior to the first symptom of Alzheimer's disease. Can you imagine what we can do if we can now detect this problem way ahead before that first symptom, right?
Yeah.
That would be amazing. And if we can detect it, imagine what we can do proactively to try to bend this curve so that it's not the third or fourth leading cause of death with that. That's actually what we're working on now, where I'm at with that. So, back to the office. 17 years of taking care of patients. I realized that, and this is really one of the reasons why I went from clinical practice to what I'm doing now. I've realized that by the time a patient comes to me complaining of memory loss, it's usually too late, right? Because we don't catch this disease until it's in the moderate stage. And what happens is we missed an entire mild stage of Alzheimer's, which can go on for years. And what happened during this mild stage? Why won't the patient come in? It's because we think it's just part of aging, right?
Right.
It's like, hey, I'm forgetting, but I'm getting older, so what? It's, we think it's natural. So this mild stage goes on for years. We think it's part of aging. We blame it on aging. Our family thinks it's just part of aging. And even your doctor thinks you're just getting older. So nobody addresses it until it's too late. By the time it affects your ability to do stuff at home, when you're starting to forget to turn off the stove, or when you're wandering, or that's when patients come in. That's when family brings patients in. And by that time, we have missed several years of this mild stage that we can make a difference in entirely. Because as this disease progresses, as you know, there's less and less options for treatment. Isn't that right?
Right.
So by the time you catch it in this moderate stage, we miss potential medications that may help. As this disease progresses, there's hardly any options left, other than what we can do for you and your loved one at Alzheimer's Orange County. How many of you guys have heard of Alzheimer's Orange County? Yeah, you attended the classes? Cool. How was that?
Great.
Yeah?
My daughter went too. She forgot.
Okay, great. I'm glad you and your daughter came. Alzheimer's Orange County is right in Irvine, and that's actually where I'm at. I'm on the 3rd floor with that. And the whole purpose of this organization, Alzheimer's Orange County, is basically to be there for you and your loved ones. For patients who have Alzheimer's or any type of dementia and their loved ones. And the cool thing about it is they have, about 40 support groups. Is that right, Vicki? They got about 40 support groups, not just there, but throughout the county, for both loved ones, caregivers, and patients. Because we know that we need to support the family as well, not just the patient. As a matter of fact, the patient oftentimes don't even know, right? Or care. It's really the burdens on the family and the caregiver with that. So make sure we check out our information at the back.
This is the one group here, in Asia Road, on the 2nd Tuesday of the month.
So,
Fourth Tuesday of the month.
4th Tuesday of the month, there is a support group here
I'm sorry.
for Alzheimer's Orange County. If you need that type of support, or your family member, or if you're a caregiver, remember that's available here. Everything done in Alzheimer's Orange County is completely free of charge with that. And what I do on the 3rd floor, I do free consultations as well for brain health, and there's no charge for that as well. So everything inside that building actually is free for our patients and our caregivers, because that's our mission and our passion to do that. So let me get back here. We are detecting this too late in our community throughout the United States. And this is why Alzheimer's in the entire country, I think it's the 5th or 6th leading cause of death. By the time we make this diagnosis, the patient is already at the moderate stage. And those pills that we have, they'll help a little bit. But as you know, we have only 3 pills available, that really are FDA approved with that are currently being used. Do you know what they are? Aricept. What's the other one? Namenda. There's one more. There's a patch you can put in your skin to help with memory. Exelon patch, right? And those are the 3 that we currently use to treat the symptoms of dementia and Alzheimer's.
Would you repeat them?
Yes.
Yeah. Aricept?
No, repeat the 3 of them.
Yes. The number 1 is Aricept. The generic name is donazepam.
Oh, they have a generic.
I spelled Jerem.
Yeah.
I spelled Jerem. What was it?
Donazepam. So it's my Vietnamese accent, it sucks. Banana peel, something like that.
Sounds good.
Number 2 is Namenda. Namenda's number 2. Number 3 is Exelon that we currently have. By the way, the last medication that has been approved for Alzheimer's, do you know which one it was out of those 3? What's the latest one? Namenda, yes. Do you know when Namenda was approved? How long ago? Anyone? The last medication FDA approved for Alzheimer's was 13 years ago. We've had no new treatment since. Pretty scary when you think about it. 13 years ago was the last time we had something new for Alzheimer's. And we're still using it now, 13 years later. Why is that?
No research.
No research? Well, that's a good answer. There is research, but it's obviously not enough. Not enough, which is one of the reasons why I am now doing some clinical research on Alzheimer's with that.
Too expensive?
The medications? Well, it's too expensive to, it depends on the insurance coverage. But really, the research needs to be done. The clinical trials need to be done to find a new treatment. Now, it's not that there hasn't been clinical trials that hasn't been done the last few years. There's been a lot of clinical trials being done over the last few years. Okay, over the last 13 years for Alzheimer's. The problem is, out of the, I don't know, ballpark number 240, 250 clinical trials that have been done in Alzheimer's in the last 13 years, the problem is they have all failed. We have not found a successful medication. By the time they get through this phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, by the time they get to phase 3, they get shot down. The medication doesn't work compared to the, the placebo group, the control group. Very scary. 13 years, no success with that. I'm just giving you gloom and doom, am I? With that. Let's talk a little bit about, trust me, there's hope at the end of my lecture. Let's talk a little bit about why 250-something or 240-something clinical trials have failed on Alzheimer's. Before we can do that, let's talk about what are the causes of Alzheimer's, right? If we know the cause, we can direct the clinical trial toward that cause, right? What are the causes of Alzheimer's?
It must be diet.
It must be diet. Okay, somebody said old age, somebody says gene, somebody says diet, and I will say yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah. All of the above.
Yes. So the first thing you should not do is eat a cookie. Or no more than one cookie, max. But
So that's what they have to do.
let me tell you
One cookie a day.
what causes Alzheimer's.
Okay.
Because it's not one single cause, right? There are 3 buckets, I call them buckets, of causes for Alzheimer's, okay? And these 3 buckets are, number 1, the first bucket is circulation, poor blood flow to the brain, right? Does it kind of make sense?
Yeah.
If you're not getting blood to your brain, it's going to damage your brain, right? Circulation. So let's talk about circulation real quick.
That's pretty.
Did you know that out of every 10 patients with Alzheimer's, 8 of them have high blood pressure? Out of every 10 patients with Alzheimer's, 4 of them have diabetes.
Could you repeat that?
Yes. Of every 10 patients with Alzheimer's, 8 of those patients have high blood pressure, 4 of them would have diabetes, and 2 or 3 of them would have heart disease. What is the underlying factor between all these 3 conditions?
Circulation.
Circulation. Bad circulation. Patients with heart disease, right? It's a circulatory disorder. Not just to the heart, but if you have heart disease, my bet is that you've got circulation issues all over, right? Including blood flow to your brain. Diabetes, right? 4 out of 10 patients have diabetes. Isn't that scary?
Yeah.
With that. What is the cause of death for diabetes? Cause of death. Why do diabetics die? Is it because their sugar's too high?
Low. Drug.
Diabetics pass away from heart attacks. It goes back to circulation. Diabetes, high blood sugar damages the circulation in your body. So diabetics don't necessarily die from the sugar being too high. It's a heart attack or a stroke that gets you. It all boils back to circulation. It's the side effects of these high blood sugars, right? And high blood pressure, that's the 3rd reason. Same thing, high blood pressure is a circulatory problem with that as we get older with that.
I have a question.
Yes?
What about people that are terrible snorers and they're having to use a CPAP machine? That's a loss of circulation there to the brain.
Perfect question. She asked about people who snore at night, or those, not necessarily just snorers, but those who snore because sleep apnea. Ever heard of sleep apnea? Ever slept with somebody who has sleep apnea? There you go. Or actually lack of sleep from somebody who has sleep apnea, right? We have found through clinical research that if you're not getting at least 6 hours of sleep at night, of good sleep, you are at risk for Alzheimer's. And we know that patients who have sleep apnea do not get good sleep, right? They're not getting oxygen up to their brain at night with that. So, thank you. Perfect question. And I'm open to any question, by the way. This is a conversation, not really a lecture.
You said something about heart disease, other heart disease.
Yes, heart disease is basically in the circulation bucket of causes. So if you have heart disease, you're not getting circulation to your heart, but you're also probably not getting circulation up to your brain with that. Which is the reason why, how do you improve circulation? Somebody said exercise, right? Did you know that the studies have shown that if you were able to do some type of cardio exercise about half an hour a day, 30 minutes a day, that lowers your risk for Alzheimer's? That's right. Why is that? Because circulation, right? You're getting blood flow up there now with that. Just half an hour a day. And you don't have to do it all at once. You can break it down to twice a day. 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the afternoon.
Walk your dog.
Right? Walk the dog, right? Or have the dog walk you, right? With that. Yeah, circulation. So if you can get your blood pressure under control, it will minimize your risk. If you can get your heart disease issues under control, because what's good for the heart is good for the brain, right? All these associated conditions. And if you can get your diabetes under control, remember, what kills diabetics is circulatory. If you get your sugars under control, you'll help your circulation as well. All right, yes?
Could you tell us what is normal blood pressure for you and your section of medicine?
What is normal blood pressure? Yes, great question. Great question.
20 over 70.
Does anyone know? 120 over 80? Does that go for everybody? Okay, what does 120 over 80 go for? I would say,
No problems.
I think it's 120/70 is a guideline by American Heart Association.
okay, close. So 120/80
70.
is if you have a history of heart disease, if you have diabetes, things of that sort, we want it lower than the normal range. If you are completely healthy without any medical problems, 140 is the number, right? Yeah, 140. So, yeah, so you get some bonus points if you're healthy with that. 140. We want your number under 140 over under 90 if you're completely healthy. But if you have issues like diabetes, heart disease, obviously we want it lower than that because we want a cushion, right? With that. Yes, so very good question with that. Yes.
So if high blood pressure has 80% of chance of getting Alzheimer, 40% if you have diabetes, and if you have heart problem, circulation, that's another reason. That means if you had all three of them, which some of us, I'm sure I have 2 of those. So I have diabetes and hypertension. I'm on medication. I'm in good control. But if you had all those 3 things, you have 100%. You can have Alzheimer's disease. Can you make that?
Well, the math isn't exactly like that, but the more of those conditions you have, the higher your risk is, for sure. So if you have all 3 conditions compared to somebody who has maybe 1 condition, your risk will be higher, definitely. Okay, did we cover the circulation bucket well? You want to go to the next bucket?
Yes. Okay.
All right, the next bucket
I have
is,
a question. I take the 81 milligram aspirin every day because they said that's good for your blood to circulate. Is that okay for?
baby aspirin. It really depends. I think a lot of us take baby aspirin as a prevention, right? So it really depends on your individual diagnosis, how many diagnoses you have, how many conditions you have that put you at risk for heart disease or diabetes and stroke and all that. That determines if you should take that baby aspirin or not. So as opposed to like a blanket, recommendation for everybody.
Thank you.
All right, you ready for the second bucket?
Okay.
Circulation's number 1. Bucket number 2, inflammation. Inflammation.
Inflammation of what?
Good question. Good question. We have found that patients who have internal systems that are always kind of inflamed. And when I say inflamed, I'm not talking about like arthritis type of inflammation, right? I'm not necessarily talking about that. So no worries. But when there are internal inflammation and your system is inflamed, not only is your body affected, what else is affected? Exactly. It's the same theory as circulation, right? If you have bad heart disease and bad circulation to your heart, most likely that circulation problem's in here. If you have inflammation issues throughout your body, most likely it's up here as well. How do we know that? We know that the circulation issue is an issue because first we can measure it through clinical research. There are certain things we can measure. But secondly, there are certain countries in the world where people get older and Alzheimer's is really low on their list of disease. And we're like, what's going on here? Why is it so high in the US and let's say in India, Alzheimer's is very low on the list? You said something.
Turmeric,
Turmeric. Why is that? What does it have to do with turmeric?
because it's an anti-inflammatory things, and it's been used, it's the curry in the Indian food.
Yeah, have you guys heard of turmeric? Have you guys ate turmeric?
Yeah.
What kind of food is it?
Curry.
Curry.
It's curry, right? Is that the yellow stuff?
Yeah.
So the yellow stuff in Indian food has turmeric. Yeah. You haven't had Indian food, that's why. Gotta go grab some. But we have found, and you're correct, we have found that in certain countries where their diet consists of certain foods that are what I call the low inflammation type diet, of which turmeric is one, we found a low incidence of Alzheimer's. Yeah, very, very interesting. There's another country that we know. Oh, a few of you guys mentioned Japan already. How did you know that? Yeah, you read up on it? Yeah, Japan. Yeah, a lot of old folks in Japan, but the majority of them keep their memory.
They eat a lot of fish.
They eat a lot of fish. Yeah. And shoot, you can come give my lecture. That's awesome.
But they also have high salt in the shoyu.
Yeah, oh, the soy sauce? Yeah. The Japanese, so how many have heard that fish oil is good for you?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of hands up, right? Yeah, fish oil has been studied in a lot of clinical research to evaluate this and that. But yeah, the Japanese have a really low incidence of Alzheimer's because they are on a fish-based type diet. A lot of fish in their diet. That's where we get sushi from, right? Sashimi, all the good stuff. Yeah, I have that for lunch and stuff. But yeah, fish-based diet, fish oil. Fish oil is an anti-inflammatory. Did you know that? Yeah, it's an anti-inflammatory. So there's this association we've noticed in people who eat stuff that are anti-inflammatory type foods and a lower incidence of Alzheimer's disease. Very interesting.
What's a probiotic have to do with that?
Does anyone know what a probiotic have to do with it? Probiotic? Yes.
It's the good bacteria and also all the amino acids that you need for digesting your food.
Yes, probiotics. How many of you guys have heard of probiotics?
Oh, yeah.
How many of you guys have taken probiotics?
Oh,
Why do you take a probiotic?
to clean the
Your gut health?
intestine.
Really? Okay. Why else do you take probiotic? Yeah, probiotic is good bacteria, right? Does everyone know that? It's good bacteria. Does everyone know that we have both good bacteria and bad bacteria in our body? Does everyone know what the ratio is between all the bacteria in your body versus your own cells in your body? So of every one cell in your body, there's like 10 bacteria cells. And viruses and other things with that. So no, good and bad.
Oh, good and
Good and bad. So truthfully, you are only 10% of you. The other 10% is like microbes, bacteria, viruses, things of that sort with that. And we alter that. We alter the good and the bad based on what we eat, our diet, right? And as far as probiotics is concerned, there is a link between your gut health and your brain health, actually. It's being studied now. Not in clinical, it hasn't been studied in humans yet, but I can tell you the study results from rats. So they took rats, mice, mouse, whatever, and they created Alzheimer's in these rats. Yes, kind of weird. Science is able to create Alzheimer's, a condition of Alzheimer's in these rats. And what they did was they wanted to study the gut health, right, the probiotics. So what they did was when they transplanted the probiotics or the bacteria in the gut of a normal rat into the gut of a rat with Alzheimer's, the rat with Alzheimer's got better. And vice versa. If they took the gut, when I say gut, I mean the bacteria in the gut of the rat with Alzheimer's, and they transplanted it to the gut of a normal rat, that normal rat got Alzheimer's. Isn't that weird? We don't fully know the connections yet because we haven't tested this in humans, but there is a link somewhere. And so, good point, whoever pointed about probiotics. Yeah, credit for that. So, so we talked about circulation, we talked about inflammation, right? What is that third bucket? Anyone know?
Heredity.
Hereditary. There is a gene. There is a gene for Alzheimer's. It's called the ApoE gene with that. But just because you have that gene doesn't mean you'll get Alzheimer's. Because there's something besides having that gene, there's usually a trigger. There's a trigger that turns that gene on, right? Because even if you have a gene, you can keep that gene off, right? But there's something in our diet, our lifestyle that turns the gene on that increases your risk for Alzheimer's. Because we know that patients who have several copies of this gene have a higher risk for Alzheimer's. So hereditary, okay. Not the third bucket, but yes, that's a factor with that. So,
Environment.
environment, good point. So, good point. So the third bucket is toxins. Toxins. Or toxins in the environment. With that, somebody said pollution. Okay, recent article recently published. Those who are exposed to pollution, those who live in polluted areas, have a higher risk of Alzheimer's. Isn't that crazy? And what is that? That's toxins, right? That's the stuff you breathe. But it's not just the stuff you breathe, it's the stuff we eat. Right? When you're eating a steak, are you just eating a steak?
No.
What else are you eating?
Anything the cow ate.
You're eating anything the cow ate, right? And what did the cow eat? Hormones. What else did the cow eat? Antibiotics that are fed to keep that cow healthy and fat, right?
Yeah. And corn instead of grain.
Right.
Or grass.
When you're eating stuff, you know, when you're eating stuff, vegetables and stuff like that, and if they're not organic, the bottom of that pyramid is what they recommend you should eat more of. And as you go up higher in the pyramid, you're supposed to eat less and less, right? What is at the bottom of that pyramid that is recommended that you should eat more of? Vegetables is not at the bottom of the food pyramid. Carbohydrates is at the bottom of the food pyramid. If you don't take a look at food pyramid, it's breads, grains. Vegetables is somewhere up here. Carbohydrate is at the bottom of our traditional food pyramid. Isn't it interesting that it's the carbohydrate that's actually causing us diabetes and heart disease, and obesity? This is what is recommended on the food pyramid. Right? For the last, I don't know how long that pyramid's been around with that. But it's pretty scary that if you did follow the food pyramid, which most of us do, right? Because carbs is the mainstay of the American diet, isn't it? It's bread, pasta, pizzas.
Don't they give quantities for each level?
They do. They give quantities for each level with that. It's the same stuff that we are eating in the food pyramid that's probably killing us, causing us heart attacks and things of that sort.
Who is the bad guy? Who says all those things?
Well, there's no bad guy. This food pyramid's been around for at least 50 years. It was created many, many years ago, before all this knowledge, right? Before all this medical
Now, what
knowledge
do you eat?
with that.
What do
So,
you eat?
good question. What do you eat? Well, I like chicken feet, but it's probably not an American diet with that. What do you eat?
Eat more
Well,
chicken.
good question. What do you eat? So as you can see, there are 3 buckets, right? You can get Alzheimer's from poor circulation. You can get Alzheimer's from inflammation. You can get Alzheimer's from just breathing in bad air,
Dioxide.
right? Toxins with that. If I think of this condition as if Alzheimer's was a house, right? Or actually, no. If a normal brain was a house, and it's raining outside, right? Alzheimer's would be all the leaks of water that comes off through the roof. And you got 3 buckets of causes raining down from this roof into your house, damaging your brain. Does that make sense so far?
Yes.
And the problem is, by the time the patient gets to me, they've already got 30 leaks. They don't have 1 or 2, because that 1 or 2 leak is during the mild phase of the disease where they don't come in. They think it's getting older. By the time the patient gets to me, they've got 20 to 30 leaks. Which leak am I supposed to plug? Right? This is why we have no control over Alzheimer's. Because by the time the patient gets to us, the roof is leaking all over. From all causes, all types of stuff. Our problem now, and this is why we haven't found a successful medication treatment in 13 years, is because what is the clinical trial? What are they testing? One medication to try to plug what? 1 leak. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We only try to plug 1 leak per medication. And we wonder why we've done 200-something clinical trials and it's still leaking. We found no new treatments over 13 years. So what is the answer to this?
I would want to sign on the first thing.
Prevention.
Prevention. The answer to it is to get all the way to the beginning. You don't wait till this mild stage. You get to the beginning and you do everything you can to protect your roof, to prevent those leaks. Does that make sense? Yeah.
What are the first signs of the first leak?
First sign of the first leak. I don't remember. But yeah, it's that occasional memory loss. Because to tell you the truth, yeah.
So Dr. Trin, would you say someone that has diabetes or heart problems or blood pressure problems or circulatory problems, inflammation, those would probably be similar to the first signs of being concerned about?
That's right. If you have all those conditions that puts you at risk for circulation, right? Blood pressure, diabetes,
What about TBI?
heart disease, traumatic brain injuries, things of that sort. If you know whether it's yourself or your loved ones, right? Somebody in the family who have these conditions, let's protect their roof now. Let's do what we can to get that blood pressure under control. Let's do what we can to get the blood sugar under control. Let's start our 30 minutes of walking a day, right? We got to get to the front of this, protect our roof, because by the time you come to me with 30 leaks, that's it.
So
Yeah.
The roof is falling.
It's too late for us.
No, you're talking to me. It's not too late for you. If you're not talking to me, it's too late for you.
But I'm sorry, I forgot that.
If you can have a conversation with me, it's not too late. Yeah.
I have a question, because I feel like I try to make something out of what you're saying, and to me, the brain is like the motor of the car. And if it doesn't get oil and it doesn't get water, it's gonna plunk out.
That's right.
So, but I haven't heard you mention water.
Yeah, the brain, she said the brain is like the motor of your car, and it needs, a general checkup, lubrication, oil, all those different things to keep it healthy, right? So the question is water important? Of course, water to prevent dehydration is important in general. Okay, so fluids is important. But how do you lubricate your brain? How do you keep this motor? What is the oil that lubricates it?
The fish oil.
Fish oil, olive oil.
So oxygen.
Oxygen, yes, sleep apnea, right? You gotta treat that sleep apnea to protect the roof, right? So, let's look now. How many of you guys have that little diet sheet thing I gave you? Not everyone has it, because I think we probably ran out. Do we have any more? How many of you guys need some diet sheet? There's a few. Just keep your hands up and we'll give it to you. We're gonna go over things we
Somebody
can
need
do.
one? There's an extra one here. Anyone?
It says no chocolate chip.
Okay, keep your hands up. We'll get you a diet sheet. Okay?